This video is simply going to be me walking through the syllabus for my Course of Study 122 class, giving some descriptive components to that syllabus. We won't actually talk about most of this in class. I will simply, when we gather, give you an opportunity to ask any questions that are left unanswered from this video. But my assumption is going to be that this video explaining the syllabus along with the syllabus is going to be enough. So if you have questions that come up during the video, jot those down so that you can ask them when we're together, because that's going to be the only time that we're going to talk about the syllabus, given that you've had the opportunity to see this video. So you'll notice at the top of my syllabus that I have my contact information. That's my email. That's also my cell phone. I will say that I'm very comfortable with you calling or texting people. I have students that are texting me and calling me on a regular basis on my cell phone. So I'm very comfortable engaging in those ways. Secondly, you'll see a bit of a bio about me. And one of the reasons that I put that bio on there is, well, first of all, I guess I hope that you check out my books, and maybe you'd want to use one of those books as resources for you. But the other piece is I want you to know that I'm smart enough to teach this class, and then we can just go on with respecting one another. I really prefer to be called by my first name, which is Jeremiah. I don't really like all the titles of Reverend, Doctor, Corporal, Chaplain, all the titles that I've had in my life. I would really just prefer to be Jeremiah. If you can agree that you can respect me in that way, then I'll respect you, and we don't have to we can dispense with some of the other components there. Course description, specifically just jumping down to the course objectives. These 4 objectives are determined by the course of study curriculum. These are not course objectives that I have created, but ones that the course of study managers have said that are important for you to learn. Examine your your understanding of faith, sin, salvation, grace in the place of doctrine in the life of the church. We're going to be doing that through our readings and our writings on the various theological essays. So you will have, depending on your syllabus, either 4 or 5 short theological essays on these theological themes of God, sin and humanity, salvation, etc. So that's the primary location that we will be doing that work. Use and understand classical theological terms and themes. I hope that you'll get introduced to those. We're going to talk about the use of theological language, and I'll provide some resources that you can start off expanding your theological vocabulary. 3, critically consider the sources of theological reflection, including scripture, tradition, experience, and reason. We're going to talk a lot about the Wesleyan quadrilateral, the use of scripture, and that will become a big part of the first part of our class together. And finally, reflect theologically as a resource for pastoral ministry. And in this class, I focused a lot of that should be throughout the class, but especially theological reflection on ethics. That is at the last unit of the class, and that's a significant aspect of the pastoral theology or pastoral ministry. Disability needs. If you are have any kind of a disability, you don't necessarily have to disclose what that disability is to me, but if there are accommodations that you require, then please ask me about accommodations for disability. And there are various possibilities of how we can meet those, and I'd be glad to talk with you about how we can help meet whatever needs you have. You're going to find that there are 3, actually, I suppose you could say 4 required texts for this class. The first one is Ted Campbell's Methodist Doctrine. You're going to be reading most of this book at one time or another. This book is extremely simple. I would say it's overly simple in some ways. But I think for those of you who have not done a lot of theological reflection, you'll appreciate Dr. Campbell's very sort of straightforward way of conveying theology, and there's just a lot of clarity there. Second book, Justo Gonzalez and Zeta Perez wrote an introduction to Christian theology. I will say Gonzalez is primarily a historian, and so a lot of that book is going to give us the historical trajectory of some of our theological themes. As I'll explain in other moments, I'm not a big fan of some of Gonzalez's theological method, but most of his history of Christian doctrine is going to be incredibly helpful, and Gonzalez is one of the kind of key texts that's used in lots of seminaries and so on with regard to Christian history. And then a book that I have chosen for this syllabus is N.T. Wright's Scripture and the Authority of God. Wright is a prolific author, biblical scholar, New Testament scholar, and a bishop of the Anglican Church. This Scripture and the Authority of God is going to be a great window for us into how we're to think about Scripture and its relationship to theology more broadly. So I hope that that you'll come to enjoy that book. Most of the students who take this class will say that it's the most difficult book in the class. It is not intended to be written for scholars or anything like that. It's very much written for lay leaders or new theologians and pastors. It's not intended to be one of his academic works, which are very hard to read. But you may find it challenging, and lots of students in this class have found it challenging. But I definitely think that it's accessible enough that you can learn a great deal from Wright on Scripture and authority. And then the 2016 Book of Discipline and the United Methodist Hymnal. I will say we are going to read extensively from the Book of Discipline in this course. I do not require that you have a 2016 Book of Discipline, though. You're welcome to have any Book of Discipline, probably since 1972. The newer, the better, but most of the stuff, with the exception of our theological task, was revised in 1988. If your Book of Discipline is from 1988 or above, or more recent, then I don't think anything has changed in the sections that we're reading. The theology sections of the Book of Discipline do not change as often as some of the older or some of the other sections of the Book of Discipline. In the next page of your syllabus, you should see some direction about writing and submission of assignments. I really want those to be double-spaced pages, 12-point font, preferably like Times New Roman or very common font, and 1-inch margin on all sides. I don't want doing weird things with expanded fonts and weird margins and things like that. Just write essays in double-spaced 12-point font, and so that we all have similar kind of style. I don't really care which of the established practices of documentation for resources that you use. So if you know MLA or APA, I'm fine with you writing in those other styles. I will say that if you do not know a style, like you don't already have one of these sort of in your repertoire and you've used it before, then Chicago or Turabian, which are really the same thing, Chicago or Turabian style is normally what's used in humanities research and biblical scholarship. So I would encourage you to learn Chicago style or Turabian style. A great place to resource that, if you don't have a resource already, the online writing lab, OWL, of Purdue University is excellent and is used internationally for resourcing those things. So OWL Online Writing Lab of Purdue University is incredibly helpful for style and guide formatting. You'll see in your syllabus a long statement on plagiarism. I'm going to have a dedicated video that you can see about plagiarism and research. I really want you to watch those videos, that video, because it's critically important that we do research well. Plagiarism is just one of the concerns, but that video will help you to know how to research better and how to write better essays. If you begin to look at the calendar for this class, I generally speaking have two different kinds of assignments. There are long form essays and there are discussion forums online. Depending on whether you're taking this course in a hybrid format or whatever, or a fully online or whatever, will determine how much of each kind of essay that you have. But just generally speaking, you're going to see two kinds of assignments. If there's the long form assignments, it will have a reading assignment and it will have a kind of a longish prompt describing the essays. Usually those are multi-parts. In fact, all of them I think are multi-part, meaning you're going to have several different essays that you're going to be turning in all as one document. So those should be as one Microsoft Word document or PDF, double spaced and so on, submitted to your Moodle course site. But when you submit that, you should be able to submit that as one document. Those long form essays in all cases are due previous to a class session. So it'll have a date on there next to the essay. That will be a date of one of your class sessions. You need to have that essay completed and turned in before you come to class. If you turn it in after class, you'll still earn some partial credit, but the assignment is due before you come to class on the date that is assigned. That's true of all of your long form essays. One document submitted online in the Moodle site and submitted prior to our class session. The other kind of assignment that you'll see on your syllabus with various dates and page numbers and so on are discussion forums. And these are all going to be two parts. So the first part is you're going to read a section that's assigned and it's going to be marked clearly on your syllabus of when that's due. You're going to read the section that's assigned. You're going to write a 300-word forum posting on a particular doctrine. Doctrine of Jesus Christ, doctrine of the way of salvation, etc. Each forum posting, when you write your 300-word essay, you need to reference two different sources from your readings. So you need to go back and say, the Book of Discipline says on this. Again, how to do that, how to reference sources is in the video about plagiarism. So go back, reference those resources in your 300-word essay. That will be due by whatever date is on that essay. So I'm looking at one right now that says June 3rd. That may not be on your syllabus if you have a different syllabus than the one I'm looking at. But June 3rd is the day for the discussion forum. You have to have the discussion forum turned in by that day. And then there'll be a later date, in this case June 6th, so several days later, when you need to go back into that forum and do a 200-word response to someone else's posting. So you're going to go in and read the other your colleagues' essays. You're going to write a 200-word response. Again, you're going to reference some of our reading at least once in your response now. So I want these to be focused responses. I don't want you just saying, hey, I really liked when you said XYZ. They should be appreciative sometimes. They may be critical sometimes, but they should be scholarly engagement with what your colleague has written and should be 200 words. You are welcome in the discussion forum to create longer conversations than that. You are welcome to respond to people who have written criticisms or complimentary writing on your responses to your essay. But the thing that will be graded and expected is that you would write at least one 200-word response usually by Saturday after the initial forum is due on a Wednesday. Each syllabus, check your syllabus for dates, because each syllabus may be a little bit different on that. The last thing that you're going to find on your syllabus, if you go to the last page, is going to be the total points for the entirety of our class and how many points is assigned to each assignment within the class. And then you'll see a grading scale. Most of the time, there may be exceptions, but most of the time, my classes have a total of 200 points. So you can see the grading scale there, but just generally speaking, a 95 is an A, a 93 to 95 is an A minus, and so on. We do have a minus, B plus B scale for grading, so you can see what points are expected. Below that, I have a sample rubric. So this happens to be for a 60-point paper sample, just to give you a sense for what value is going to be placed on each component of your writing. About 10 points out of the 60 have to do with the quality of your actual writing, whether your grammar, spelling, well-constructed sentences, etc. Are you being redundant and fluffy writing, or those kind of things? Are you writing like a professional pastor should write? Secondly, 15 points. Does this essay communicate the content of the assigned readings without bias? Did you read the document well? Did you convey that you understood the argument that's being put forward? The third one, 15 points. Does it show insight into the meanings and intentions of the author? Did you understand the author? Are you able to communicate what that person said? And then finally, 20 points. Clearly articulates application of the work of that assignment in one's own faith and ministry, states one's own position in response to the readings when appropriate, explains where the learning of this assignment is relevant to the work of pastoral ministry. So that last 20 points of the essay, so about 1/3 of the essay, is in your ability now. You've explained, through a professional quality writing, explain what the author said, explain what was most important about what they said, dissected it a little bit. Now, how does this apply to your own teaching? Would you reject some parts of it? Would you adopt some parts of it? And how are you going to work with that kind of content? So that should be a good explanation into how to read your syllabus, a little bit about how we will engage in this course. Pretty much everything that you're going to turn in is going to be turned in on Moodle. And then whether we're having in-person lectures or whether this is a hybrid course or whatever, will change a little bit about how we're doing some of the other components of the course. But that should give you a good breakdown of the syllabus and how to read that. So if you have any questions, you're welcome to email me, text me from the phone number that's on my syllabus, or ask them when we gather. Thanks a lot.